The various depictions of the railway in 19th century British art reveals a sense of trepidation at the prospect of significant change to everyday life. The structured societal class model of Britain notwithstanding, concerns about what effects the railway would have on everyday life and civilization in general were not limited to a certain class. Whether the particular concerns on the part of the affluent and wealthy regarding the monopolistic methods of the railway directors, or the more common concerns of moral degradation, the railway carried with it consternation for all. 19th century British art depicting the railway illustrates a collectively shared sense of anxiety and apprehension about the social and moral future of Victorian Britain. Thomas Bury's railway paintings in the 1830s show initial optimism toward the railway, but his inclusion of mechanical and impersonal characters uncomfortably foreshadows the diminution of human persons caused by new technology. Bury's 1931 view of the railway across Chat Moss depicts a train carefully and peacefully rolling along through the middle of the country. The land is very plain and barren looking, contrasted with the train, which is defined, bearing vivid and unusual colors, the implication being that the train carries with it novelty and brightness, as if it were a life-giver. The path the train has taken is free of shadows, as if the train were erasing them and the shadows dissipate as the train goes through them. This can be seen as the clouds move away from the track, and as the train enters the bottom of the canvas, the shadow covering that area appears to part. The one instance of human life, however, is bleak. The man in the lower right corner is minuscule when compared to the train and the land. While Bury may have intended the train to be coming to rescue him from the shadows, his spatial insignificance is alarming. In The Impact of Technology on the Human Image in Art critic Julie Wask writes, quote, "These dual perspectives of optimism and alarm have characterized art since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. They saw steam engines as an embodiment of human expertise, yet considered their mammoth size to be a threat to human stature." Unquote. In Bury's The Tunnel, we're treated to a similar depiction. In an enclosed area, we can better sense Wask's observations that, quote, "A preoccupation with giganticism was seen in artists' depictions of new machines." Unquote. The enormous man-made tunnel houses the imposing stature of the man-made train, both easily dwarfing the men in the picture. As was the case in view of the railway across Chat Moss, the characters are faceless. In this case, they're given clothes with colors, yet each person's clothes match the color of the train, subtly integrating the two. This is concurrent with what Wask tells us, quote, "They were required to conform to the machine's specifications." Unquote. The railway threatened to transform people into nebulous decorations in a landscape, significant only in how they related to technology. British satire responded to this bleak future by mercilessly mocking the machine and its masters. In Business and Pictures, representations of railway enterprise in the satirical press in Britain 1845 to 1870, Dr. James Taylor of Central Lancashire explains that, quote, "The novelty of rail travel in the 1820s and 30s bred a degree of antipathy and suspicion. However, beginning in 1845, cartoons stressed the dynamic and destructive power of the engine. One salient example of this sentiment is the great land serpent from the publication Puppet Show, which depicts the railway as an insatiable dragon gobbling up man, woman, and child, each represented as a money bag with a different numerical denomination and a face. This is concurrent with the effects Bury's paintings have, where man is only an accessory, or in this case a victim of technology. The serpent winds indefinitely into the distance, implying the vast reach of the railway enterprise and its destruction. Also at this time, the railway director first became a muse for satirists. The Railway King, published in Man in the Moon, depicted George Hudson, a major railway shareholder and politician, with features that were entirely composed of railway parts, his crown made of smokestacks. An article in Joe Miller the Younger, titled Railway Revolution, summarized the fears surrounding men like George Hudson. Quote, "A new aristocracy will arise out of a fraud upon the existing state of society, with smoking hot potatoes, ginger beer bottles, and penny tarts for their illustrious crests." Unquote. Taylor sums up the Victorian elite's view of the railway moguls in this way, quote, "They were social and business frauds whose spell in the limelight would be brief. In the pages of the satirical press, the typical railway director was, like Hudson, a vulgar man of low birth, a charlatan who had got rich quick, but who would receive his comeuppance in due course." Unquote. The Railway Director cartoon printed in Joe Miller the Younger well portrays this rogue. He projects himself as a man of business and class, presenting plans for global industrial domination to impress his investors, but behind closed doors he is slouched over a table, disheveled, reading about himself in the newspaper. All of these various lampoons by British satirical press indicate a nervous attitude couched in contempt and disgust toward the railway as an industry, according to the threat it posed against the higher classes' economic interests, as well as the danger to their careful class structure. Abraham Solomon's first-class paintings illustrate the moral danger the railway posed for Victorian Britain. In 1854, Solomon produced First Class The Meeting, also called And at First Meeting Loved. As the title implies, this is the first encounter between a young man and a young woman, both of affluent class. Besides their well-tailored and fashionable clothes, the carriage they find themselves in clearly exemplifies their higher social standing. The benches are soft and cushioned, with a surplus of materialism. A fishing rod, cane, umbrella, pile of clothes, a basket of flowers, and various forms of literacy. First Class is a highly suggestive painting, as the young man is enamored with this young woman he has only just met in passing. The young woman carefully avoids eye contact with him, but leads him on by playing with her necklace, upon which is strung a heart. The painting shows her arms in motion as if she were sliding the heart up and down, back and forth on the gold chain of her necklace, a frivolous and dangerous activity. The young man has removed one of his gloves, which may seem innocuous, but is a clear play at sensuality, as he gazes dreamily upon the young lady, while the setting sun glows on his face, emphasizing an aura of fantasy. In a work titled Love at First Sight, The Velocity of Victorian Heterosexuality, Christopher Matthews of Washington and Lee University writes, quote, "If the fishing pole next to him is one sign of a dangerously casual sexual encounter, there is another. On the left side of the canvas, her elderly male guardian is fast asleep. The father, who would serve as the moral guardian and compass for the young lady, is embarrassingly oblivious to the goings-on, having draped a rag over his head, slouched against the window shade with his legs crossed, and his glasses dangling from a chain about his neck. This scene portrays an imminent moral disaster, as if the train were bearing down upon a stretch without tracks to go off into moral oblivion. There's a further criticism in that the sun is setting, not only inviting the evening when untoward things are wont to happen, but offering a comment on the impending end of a social era concerned with order and propriety in relationships, with the dawn giving way to modernity, and an era appreciative of frivolity and flirtatiousness. Consequently, Solomon was, quote, accused of impropriety in depicting a flirtation, unquote, and having painted, quote, so bald or vulgar a subject, unquote. His response was to publish a revision a year later which bore the same name. The lighting may be the first immediately noticed difference. Whereas the original occurred under a setting sun, this revision takes place under bright blue skies, both eliminating the suggestive nature of an approaching evening, as well as the social commentary that followed with it. The young man is now transformed into a respectable soldier, rather than a nondescript and anonymous wanton passerby. In this exchange, he is approaching the proper avenues by addressing the young woman's father, while she coyly looks on from the background, knitting, trying to acquire the young soldier's attention. This is a reprioritization from the first edition, which entertained the male-female relationship as being driven by the female. In the revision, the men are clearly in control. Now, the various suggestive phallic shapes in the first edition are nowhere to be found, aside from the young man's sword, which is carefully sheathed on his hip, showing a guarded and valued modesty. However, the very nature of what was painted on the canvas remained offensive to some. Art critic James Deforn wrote, quote, "The lovers are so well pleased with themselves and each other as to interest none besides. They are merely a group of well-dressed travelers who seem to have no definite object or purpose except a passing flirtation." Unquote. The suggestiveness and impending immorality of the two first-class paintings were not the prevalent problems. Even with those stripped away, there remained the transitory and unstable passing flirtation of accidental meanings which the railway so well facilitated. In response to these various concerns, William Powell Frith's The Railway Station serves to reassure the audience that order will be maintained. In her study of Family Affair, Realism, Detection, and the Family in William Powell Frith's The Railway Station of 1862, Nancy Rose Marshall writes that, quote, "The railway station functioned to reaffirm Victorian social order, class hierarchy, and social discipline." Unquote. Published in 1862, it addresses the common fears we've encountered so far. Its grand and panoramic view provokes awe in the audience as the train stretches across the background. The depiction of the physical train in this painting does not strike fear or consternation into the viewer, but admiration at such an impressive technological achievement. Unlike Bury's paintings, which have human persons depicted as incidental to the train, Railway Station has a train that seems incidental to the people, providing an impressive background for a plethora of everyday lives. The train workers hastily prepare the passengers' luggage while the train sits patiently. At the very center of the canvas is the family in an ordered and pyramidal depiction. In fact, Frith's own family actually modeled for this. As a father, he stands proud and tall with a hand on his son's shoulder, while the mother stoops to kiss the other son before they go off to school. Slightly to the right, a soldier hoists up his young son to kiss him on the cheek before boarding the train, and a wedding party bids farewell to a bride and groom who are about to leave on their honeymoon. Each of these instances helps to quell any moral anxiety surrounding the family. Unlike Solomon's couple who met by chance for an exciting and brief-lived flirt, Frith's families fulfill a need for reliability and cohesiveness in families and male-female relationships. Familial pleasantries notwithstanding, Frith does not withhold introducing a certain amount of chaos, as if to acknowledge to the viewer that he doesn't intend to insult them by producing a fairy tale. On the far right, a criminal is about to board the train, but is apprehended by the police, a reassurance in the social order. A pamphlet promoting the painting described the criminal as an embezzler or forger, who as a financial criminal could have represented some of the fears concerning the character of railway directors and the economic concern often present among the British satirists. Marshall tells us that, quote, "Despite the fact that the felon has attempted to disguise himself by shaving his beard and muffling his face, he is still immediately recognizable to those skilled in identifying his criminal demeanor and features." Frith's Railway Station suggests that the system is functional, reassuring viewers that the mechanisms set in place for social control are effective. Seconds from escape, the criminal is caught, and most importantly, financial loss is prevented. The other chaotic constituent of the painting is found in the haste and urgency of the family to the left of Frith's, rushing to board the train. Both parents are holding the hands of the children, hurrying them along while the mother anxiously looks toward the train and the father down at his daughter as if to say, "We can't be late." Frith is saying a few things here. By having most characters in the painting board the train calmly, those who are anxious are portrayed as outliers, not wrong or crazy, but simply not ordinary, as if to say, most people are okay with this. Furthermore, the family is running toward the train, not away from it. Their anxiety is not caused by the imposing nature of the train, but at the prospect of not being able to enjoy the exciting future it might bring. Literally, their destination; figuratively, modernity. The fact that the parents are holding the hands of the children also helps to once again reassure the viewer that they can bring their family to this brave new world. Frith is not painting a door into the future so much as he is painting the steps leading up to the door, the railway station being the steps which lead to the train being the door to the future. So railway station has an inherent excitability about it found in a prospective future. While the future generally carries with it unknowns, the anxiety which normally accompanies the unknown is sated by the reliability of the train which will depart and arrive at a predetermined time and with a predetermined route. Marshall writes that this is actually a principle of unity among the would-be passengers. Quote, "Though they travel for an array of purposes, the various individuals are united by the simple fact that they all need to catch the train at an exact and predictable scheduled time. The railway station provides a vision of the possibility of technology to unify society." Unquote. So not only will the train bring the people into the future unified, it will be an instrument of maintaining social order. Marshall continues, quote, "Not only will the disorderly become ordered, it will also be conveniently categorized according to class. The words first class are legible on one of the carriages. The chaotic crowd will be tidied and sorted into different class carriages in the train itself and borne through the countryside by an engine titled Great Britain." Unquote. With Railway Station, Frith really sets out to please all and restore order. He has addressed the personal, economic, and moral concerns, and hints at a future where everything will change for the better while nothing will change substantially. The people will be more unified, but their social order and moral values will be retained. In Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle says that, quote, "All art is concerned with coming into being. For art is concerned neither with things that are, or come into being by necessity, nor with things that do so in accordance with nature." Unquote. There is nothing which compels technology to exist. It's entirely artificial and does not exist by necessity nor by nature. Rather, it exists in order to complement and aid that which has come into existence naturally or by necessity, that is, human persons. Was the railway a success in this regard? It accelerated travel and trade, created jobs, and conquered space by accomplishing tasks over long distances at unprecedented speed. Then were the various concerns expressed through and by these artists justified? Modern man is immersed in screens, reluctant to look away. Modern relationships are begun and ended electronically and impersonally, while frivolity is often welcomed and required rather than feared and disdained. Whatever grievances the modern culture makes against hierarchical class structures notwithstanding, social media and the internet age enables the simplest fool to publish and opine about subjects he is not qualified to pontificate on, placing his opinion alongside or even ahead of experts. How responsible is the railway for our current relationship with technology? The railway brought with it an unbridled technological ambition which we reap the benefits and misfortunes of each day. Eventually, the railway was not enough, and we were greeted with the plane. The railway was too commercial, and we were greeted with the automobile. Eventually, things needed to be accomplished quicker, so we were greeted with faster planes, trains, and automobiles. And when the faster planes, trains, and automobiles weren't fast enough, we eventually began to forget about travel altogether and became inundated with screens and devices and networks which allow us to accomplish nearly anything from the living room. The coming into being of new and apparently improved technologies has now become so compulsory that it threatens to no longer fall into Aristotle's apt definition of art. Perhaps this is why iPods, smartphones, and laptops don't seem to find their way onto many canvases. Anxiety and apprehension toward technology is now, like floppy disks, cassette tapes, and cell phones without Wi-Fi, a thing of the past.